fuck you. Okay, you make your own fucking podcast. Okay, I'm about to get really guinea right now. You fucking make your own fucking podcast.
Look away, look away, look away. Dixieland, 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 Dixieland. Dixieland. Praise God, rally. Oh, this is the time and place. The International Ideal unites the new.
All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in to Dixieland and the Proletariat. We're going to talk about Southern working class history and current events through a leftist perspective. Make sure to like us on social media at Dixieland and the Proletariat. For all of our links, go to our link tree at linktree/.pro. It's DOT Pro. Wherever you want to give your wages to a bunch of rednecks, you'll find a link to our Patreon. We got a lot of cool stuff to give you, including CDs, stickers, a cookbook, Discord server, and exclusive episodes. We also have a Spotify playlist with some great artists you all should check out, as well as our merch store. This podcast is brought to you by contractional monogamy, not being able to afford therapy, living at home, beta blockers, Kaiser pushing white men in the swamps, Nelson's love life, Tyler's hiatus, Mark's laughter, which brings joy to the masses, and Dr. Jill Biden's breakfast taco truck. Shout out to our Patreon subscribers. Our monthly surplus goes to groups that are run by and are help marginalized people directly. As always, I'm Nelson with...
And I'm sweating.
And I'm Mark.
and our
Thanks for selling me the fuck out, Mark.
and our guest this evening is
Tori.
Yay!
Welcome to Tori.
Yeah,
Tori's
welcome
been
back.
on one of our After Darks before, so we already know. But...
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm happy to be back.
Woo!
Yeah, if you're cool, you're already on the up and up about
yeah,
Tori.
If you're if you're cool, you know. If you're not cool, then go fuck yourself. So
if you already know who I am, like you're either like, what's the TikTok audio going around? You're either a lesbian, a teenage girl,
depressed, or like
depressed.
mentally ill. Whatever that Tisha Mattel.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
Oh shit!
artist,
That Venn
yeah.
diagram is just a fucking circle, isn't it?
or you're in like the San Antonio organizing scene, which you could still fit all of those categories at once as well.
Chrissy, wake up! I don't like this. That's been my favorite ones. Like my favorite. I mean, I've never watched Stranger Things, but the videos that go to that are like really funny.
Nelson,
but yeah,
you fucking boomer, just picked a TikTok
such a
audio.
boomer.
Yeah, thanks for dating
That
the
was, like,
episode with this like trend that's gonna be gone
That
tomorrow.
was literally the most. After I finished that, I was like, "Oh my god, that was so boomer." Be like, "Oh, I like that audio." Millennials shouldn't be on TikTok.
No, we're allowed. You just can't act like that.
I know, right? Oh my god.
You have to be a cool millennial who says things that are useful to Zoomers. It's like, hey, we've already been through this shit. We're gonna give you some advice, and then we're just gonna let it go.
Listen
just
here.
Take what you want and go.
Wait,
Listen
what's
here, Buckaroo.
The
What?
millennial ratio right now, the Zoomer to millennial ratio.
Oh,
right
we're
now,
half and
'cause
half right now.
Okay, because I like barely make the Zoomer mark.
Yeah, so you and Mark are Zoomers, and Kai and I are the millennials.
Ancient, fucking ancient.
Ancient. What do we say? What do we say in the last After Dark? It was like we're reaching the point where like we're at the end of our friends getting married, and now they're starting to get divorced.
Yep.
That's when you know Gen X is so boomers are dying. Their friends are dying, so they've gotten to that point. Gen X is like in the middle of like getting divorced and like midlife crisis, and millennials are leaving the marriage and getting into the divorce, and Zoomers are starting to get married. So that's what it is. That's what's happening. That's the real generational divide. The ratio of your friends who are married, divorced, and dying.
Which thing will you need a lawyer for first?
Do you need a funeral director, a divorce attorney, or a priest, or a judge?
You better hope you don't need a priest for all three.
A judge covers all. Do you need a death certificate, divorce papers, or a marriage license?
Oh, definitely
God.
boomer humor we just did. Oh my god, Nelson.
Boomer humor.
We are on the verge of just turning into dust and blowing away right now.
What I don't even know what are boomer jokes besides just misogyny and racism?
I hate my wife.
Oh, yeah, I hate my wife. You know,
Fucking boomer skis with the bros.
What is it? It's like, I love my 1911 more than I love my Colt 1911 more than I love my wife.
The one that I think of is the old
Wait.
vine where he turns around, like the old man is like in the stands and he turns around and he goes, "What's better than this? Just guys being dudes." Like that's boomer humor.
Wait, no, it'd be like, my wife Deborah might have left me, but who never left me? My Colt 1911. It's like it's the skeleton riding a motorcycle. Those are the best. It's like, hey, snowflake, bomb text.
My cholesterol's dangerously high.
Please, God help.
You know what, snowflake? I got high blood pressure. Oh my God.
I don't want no damn universal health care for my like piling ailments. Like,
I want to pay for each specialist I have to go to.
Get the government out of my Medicare. What? That was a big one when Obama was president. It was like, get the government out of my Medicare. It's like, y'all, what are boomers that lead poison that they're just fucking stupid?
At least I'll die free.
wait, I thought Medicare was funded by Raytheon. What do you mean?
Oh my God.
Oh wait,
damn.
Raytheon, the government.
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
already
Hand in
tied.
hand. Oh my God. So Tori, you were talking about we mentioned that the show is sponsored by Joe Biden's breakfast tacos. You were talking before we started recording about breakfast tacos. Do you have breakfast tacos? What were you saying about breakfast tacos?
Well, I wanted to ask because Joe Biden said that all Latinos are as unique as San Antonio breakfast tacos at San Antonio. And I decided, because I'm a San Antonio Latina, to ask my gringo boyfriend what breakfast taco he thought I was. And I was expecting like something like kind of luxurious, like barbacoa or lengua or something. And he was like, "Oh, you're like a potato, bacon, and egg."
Damn.
You're the one that I can buy
Starch
from fucking
and salt.
McDonald's.
Right. I was like, and he tried to say that by being like, "No, it's because you have it all." And I'm like, do you know what has it all? Lengua. Lengua has it all.
Obviously has not been taught correctly how to deal with like Texas tacos and like breakfast tacos and all that.
You know, it's so funny because like he's a San Antonio native. So
Well, apparently not.
But there's
Not a
a
very good
San
one.
Antonio native, and then there's a San Antonio quote unquote natives who burn in the sun because their families from Europe.
like we're Palestine. Like we have
Which side of the Riverwalk do you live on? It's gonna get messy.
well, like, no, it's actually very funny because like San Antonio is still a very segregated city, and it's like based on income, but of course like brown and black folk are like mainly in like the south and west side of San Antonio. There used to be like a really strong like black community in East San Antonio until like our series of neoliberal mayors started gentrifying the shit out of it and like pushed people out. I mean, like it's a tale as old as Los Angeles. So.
San Francisco. Los Angeles. Oh
Yeah, like
God.
I'm just affronted on behalf of you and your beloved boyfriend, because I remember I visited my sister who lives in Texas. She's married to a Texas native, like native. We are native. Her husband is native. And they took me on like a fucking grand tour of the tacos that were available there. And that it was very different on what you get where.
It really is. Like, here's the thing. Like, I'm not one to defend Dr. Joe Biden. I don't think she really does anything, to be honest. But like, you know, I know the analogy seems racist, and I'm going to continue to say it's racist because it's fun to accuse our first lady of racism. But like, it is true that like breakfast tacos are pretty unique.
Damn, she's out of line, but she's right.
Especially, wait, they're unique, especially when they're potato, eggs, and bacon. Oh yeah, I want potato, eggs, and bacon on a flour tortilla. No cilantro, please. It tastes
That
like
flour,
soap.
that tortilla better not have ever touched the fucking burner, so it's just dry and cracks when you roll it. There will be no hot sauce, no salsa, no nothing on this.
It's just covered in
Just sour
sriracha.
cream.
No, but it's covered in sriracha because white
No.
people love sriracha.
And no cilantro because soap taste.
The soap
Oh my
gene.
God.
This soap, yeah. Oh my god.
I feel so bad
So
for
bad
people
for
who
those
have that. I'm
people.
so sorry. Like, for real, I'm so sorry.
The men are gone. They don't understand flavor. We were talking before you got on about the virus of whiteness that infects people. And I was saying, I joke about how the Irish, when they came over somewhere between Ireland and the US, like probably around like where the Titanic sank, they traded in their fiddles and barley for fucking clan robes and police badges. But like for the Italians, it's they came over, they start about halfway there, they start speaking English and thinking that Little Caesar's pizza tastes good.
Oh, God. I hope our listener who really hates when we spend the first 20 minutes talking about absolute bullshit
Oh
is
my
really
God.
pleased with this
That was the
episode
best.
so far.
That's literally why. That's one of the main reasons why. Because we sometimes used to go straight into it, but like now we've made it a fucking point to talk about bullshit for literally the first like 15 minutes because this person was like, I like the podcast, but they don't talk, they talk too much before they get to the episode points. I'm like, fuck you. Okay. You make your own fucking podcast. Okay. I'm about to get really guinea right now. You fucking make your own fucking podcast. Okay.
There it is. The finger movements are out.
Oh, I'm already upset because
Stallion.
we lost Tony Sirico this week. All right. I don't need any more bullshit for the Metagon.
You know, given a lot of the topics that this podcast does cover, you need a little bit of a primer when you are going to talk about capitalism.
Yes.
It's just like every topic is like every topic we end up covering is just so fucking dark. I mean, for a lot of reasons, history and then present day just gets dark. We got to have some sort of humor. The podcast is going to be like, this is depressing. We're going to talk about racism and capitalism and sexism and the patriarchy. And it's just like, we got to have like some jokes at the beginning before we just go right into just depression.
I just want people to realize that we could have done like a fucking Logan Paul where they just literally like sit around and talk about their white guy lives.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's it. Like, that's it.
Oh my god.
It could have been a hybrid of Logan Paul and what's that one with what's her face Dasha and the Red Scare. It's like if Cumtown was just women.
It's like Cumtown, but with like more eating disorder, Twitter brain rot inserted.
God.
Yes. Oh my god.
No
yes.
offense.
They
But
fucking
also,
have, they hung
I
out with Alex
can't-
Jones. They can get fucked.
yeah.
Are you okay, Mark?
Yeah, I just listen to fiction podcast, so I have no beef. So, I'm sorry. I'll
I'm
come
sorry.
back for
Maybe
beef.
later you can watch that fucking Vosh video that came
Oh,
out.
yeah. Yeah. For the record, just to be clear, it wasn't a Vosh video. It was someone else's video on Vosh. Don't put that on me.
I'm sorry. I should have clarified.
Yeah, it was
Myself.
someone dissecting something he said.
No, the
And I
best
like,
was
eh.
the best was the group chat. It was like, Kai's like, it's so fucking hot in England right now. And Mark's like, I'm having to watch this video on Vosh. And I'm just like, I just heard gunshots.
It's the American experience.
Oh man. Anyway,
So Tori,
yeah,
what has been
Tori.
going on lately? Why are you here tonight?
Yeah, Tori, why are you here? What depressing topic? Since everyone wants us to jump into fucking details, what we're gonna talk about. What we have?
It's
What is
almost
it?
like this shit like affects our lives.
Here we go. I'm gonna timestamp it. Depression. This is when it's gonna start. What?
Well, I'm here to talk about just generally what's happening in Texas. I mentioned a little bit earlier that I am a San Antonio organizer, which, for the record, if there's any like northern listeners, San Antonio is not the southernmost part of Texas. By the way, we've encountered a lot of people that think we're like super south, but we're technically more central Texas than we are South Texas. We just have a lot of brown people, so people are like, "Oh, that's Mexico." But we do like engage with like a lot. We do have a very large immigrant community. We are about 1 hour away from Uvalde, Texas. Yeah, about an hour and a half away from Uvalde, Texas. And there's been a very large portion of our community that has family in Uvalde. Some of the children that were shot were brought to hospitals here in San Antonio. So while we aren't technically South Texas, like we are very much a city of immigrants, and just a city of a lot of struggle because of our unique positioning in Texas, being close-ish to the border, even though we're more central Texas, but we're just, for lack of better words, very brown. And I'm also here to talk about the abortion laws that have recently been happening in Texas, because each state has different trigger bans, and I've been doing a lot of abortion organizing here in San Antonio, and I've been looking at a lot of the liberal rhetoric in regards to the suffering in Texas, and it's been a little bit frustrating. So I'm basically here to talk about San Antonio and immigration and abortion, things that are all very, I guess, depressing, except for the San Antonio part.
So I guess I don't really have a question. I don't know if anyone has like a question to really kick off stuff, but like, so I know when I messaged you on Twitter to talk about about what we wanted to talk about, it was the extremely horrific scene of that 18-wheeler that all those migrants that were coming over the border, the immigrants, they found dead in the back of this 18-wheeler. It was absolutely horrific. It was like 50 people. And it was just like thinking about how then also in the news, I think Biden had just reversed the Remain in Mexico plan that Trump had in place. So I guess my question is right now, like, I guess like what's the fallout from that happening, and like what's been going on? Because like if you talk to like conservatives and you hear the rhetoric on Fox News and even sometimes on MSNBC, it's like there's a crisis at the border and the violence is up, and it's like almost like Fox News for the most part like pictures it as like some lawless wasteland. So like what's actually happening?
Oh no, I mean, we're definitely not a lawless wasteland. I mean, if anyone terrorizes our community, it's not the immigrants, it's our police force that are going into our communities and murdering us. There is a lot of tension in South Texas right now because of like the poverty here. I think in San Antonio, we like ranked pretty high on like the list of major cities like have like a high rate of poverty, but it's certainly not like it's certainly not a border crisis because of like the immigrants. It's not like immigrants are coming over here and doing all of these bad things. The reason why there's a crisis at the border is because there is a border in the first place, because there is heavily policing at the border, because ICE is deciding to go into people's homes, it's deciding to infringe on people's rights. The only thing I like, for example, with the 50 people found dead and dying in that 18-wheeler, we had a vigil for it. And, a lot of conservatives will cite that as like lawlessness or a tragedy or whatever. But like when we held the vigil, it was raining and not a lot of people showed up. Like it sucks because this is such a large part of our community, but no one really seems to care. We only really get mentioned in the news if, you know, extreme violence happens to us, or if one of our members like do commit an act of extreme violence.
Like it is like it how do I put this? We're seeing now with everything going on, that national media and like media in general and like people really will talk about something for just like a flash in the pan and then it just completely disappears. It's just like it's the abortion, like Roe being overturned, like as we've been talking about abortion a lot on the podcast, Roe being overturned and like everything going on, especially in southern states, was such a thing in the news, and then it just disappeared. Now it's all like this is what happened with the January 6th commission, but like nobody cares because nothing's going to happen to those people. Like they're not going to get arrested. But that's a whole nother issue. But like, you bring up a good point. It's just like people only care in the moment, and then it like goes and disappears, and no one cares. So like, I guess the next question would be like, what should people like? I guess a very broad question is what should people know, like what's going on? Like I know that's kind of the broad thing for like the episode, but I guess so what's going on? Like we mentioned before, we're recording that like Mexico has decriminalized abortion, and Texas has now outlawed abortion. So now you're going to have an influx of white people trying to go to Mexico to get abortions. So that's hypocrisy right there, because they can't, like Mexicans can't come in, immigrants can't come in to the United States. But you know, if a white person wants to go get an abortion, go on, because it's just, I don't know, it's just fun. It's just
Well,
wild.
I mean, also working class people. I mean, all this week I've been doing abortion organizing and actions and all of that. And you know, something that we talk about is that like the Texas ban specifically targets working class people. And like, of course, that includes working class people of color. So Texas House Bill 1280, which is colloquially known as the trigger ban here in Texas, will put a $100,000 fine on anyone that attempts to give or receive an abortion within the state of Texas. But like, so as a result, like people are scared to even like do like perform healthcare here. But like the people that actually need the abortion, right, the working class people, can't afford to travel to Mexico, even if Mexico like is cheaper to get an abortion in Mexico than it would be to go to, I don't know, like Seattle or something, right? Because like you still like people don't take into account like wage loss when you're traveling to get an abortion, and then also recovery time when you're traveling to get an abortion. Like it's really just like forced birth what's happening here. You know, and I think what people need to know about, I guess, what it means to be on the border is that like it's just a normal ass place. And like I like that's probably not like the big scoop that people want to hear, but like it's just a normal place. Like the media really wants to portray it as like something lawless and horrible, but like again, the lawlessness and horribleness like comes from the U.S. You know, trying to like segregate people based off of income, and also like xenophobia.
America. He's some racism and xenophobia. It's just the model of the U.S. Cottage, you gonna say something? Or you lit up for a second?
Yeah, I was thinking of I mentioned like very briefly earlier that my sister and her family live in South Texas. They live like right down at the bottom of Texas, a little tiny point of Texas. And I've gone to visit them, and we've like driven to a parking lot and walked into Mexico, and it's just very like they're like I remember, so this is several years ago now, but I remember like you go through a turnstile like getting into fucking Six Flags and you pay a quarter and you're in Mexico and they have restaurants and bathrooms and shops and grocery stores and you know it's just a normal place. It's the difference is that like slightly more of the signage is in Spanish in Mexico, but they do also have English signage because there's all these Americans who go over all the time. And like if you want to talk about how the border can be horrible, but it's completely on the US side, it's that for us to get into Mexico, we walk through a turnstile and paid a quarter. For us to get back into the US, now, I have to preface this by saying that this is my sister and her family that we're talking about. My sister and I are both native, but we're both very, very fair, and we pass for white. My sister's husband is, he's native as well, but he's very, very dark brown, and his people are Mexican natives. And he, like, it shouldn't matter, but I will also say that like he was born in the US, he served in the US military, he's lived in the US his entire life. English is his first language, all of these things. But when we were coming back through to the American side of the border, my sister and I just got waved through basically, and my brother-in-law got stopped and searched for 20 minutes because he's dark and brown. And like it was so like we knew how clear that was, but it was so painfully obviously clear at that moment that like they literally picked him because he's brown, even though he's traveling with two people who pass for white. It was just like you couldn't have made it more clear at that moment, really.
Nothing beats the what is the meme is like the US in movies and then like Mexico in movies has that like
The sepia tone.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yellow tint to it.
And like the other thing that I'll point out is that when we crossed the border, I remember seeing a lot of signs for dentists that were in English, because there's so many Americans who can't afford dental care in America, so they go to places like they cross the border to go to dentists who practice in Mexico. And like that should be your dystopia, that people cannot access healthcare in their own communities, so they have to go to, for them, foreign communities to access any kind of healthcare that they can. Like the dystopia is fully on the American side, it's not on the Mexican side.
Well, like the irony is that they keep, you know, Mexicans out, like they're the ones that are going to be like exploiting the US, you know, like that very popular talking point on the right where it's like, oh, they're coming on here and they're living off of our tax dollars, when like in reality the United States is built off of the wealth it extracted from the global south, including Mexico, via imperialism. And it also continues to sustain itself off of like the cheap exploited labor from undocumented people. Because you've probably talked about this on the podcast before, but like undocumented people, they they get paid shit and they have to work in really shitty working conditions because they can't go to like some government organization because they're just going to throw them back over the border. They're going to like detain them in an ICE detention center or something, right? So like getting paid like $1 for like 10 out, like, oh my goodness, like maybe even 12 hours days of work, and like these like really shitty like dormitories, you know, looks a lot like indentured servitude, what a lot of undocumented people go through. So, you know, it's ironic how strict the US is about the border, when like the US is the one that's been exploiting Mexican people, and other people of color for a very long time.
Yeah, it's like, you know, we love their labor, but we hate them as people. It's just it's crazy. And then like the entire, like people don't realize like the entire supply chain like relies on labor like that. And it's just, and the people just don't get it until they're like, how come I can't get fresh produce? Oh, it's because the government is racist and shitty and won't let people come over and work and treat them like shit. That's why you can't get that. So, you know, fuck you.
Yeah, and with Corona, they died.
Yeah.
Like they don't have any access to healthcare. They can't ask off for work, so they lost their job. So that's where they went. They're dead.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how many people died, like out of like just not just the domestic, but the international labor force that died of COVID. And it's like, why can't I get
I cannot get my chicken wings.
Yeah,
It's like,
damn it.
There are
well,
not
yeah,
people there.
Yeah. Also, we normally would get on the people for like doing the stereotypical Southern accent, but we're all Southerners, and so like the people we're talking about do sound like that. But if you damn Yankees,
Yeah, I'm allowed.
we're allowed to. Okay, if you're a
I
Yankee,
earned it.
yeah, go fuck yourself. Okay, until you've had people in your family named Bubba that talk like that, you can get fucked. Okay. You get to stick with your racist Bostonian accent. We will imitate our own family members. Thank you very much.
If y'all want a yardstick, I want y'all to consider that a part of the family that married into my family, their last name is Weiser, and I had a cousin named Bud. His name was Bud Weiser.
Hell yeah.
Hell
There's your yardstick to go
Tell
against.
you what. Woo!
I'm allowed to do the accent even though I can't do it very well because they terrorized my ancestors. So.
Yeah. Those are the only two. Anyone else?
You have like everybody whose ancestors were terrorized by white people. You have the right to put on the white voice for when you need it. For me now, that's putting on like a slight English accent.
I'm just thinking of the fucking Texas Rangers. Its theme song for the show is like "In the Eyes of a Ranger." Fucking Chuck Norris.
It's so funny. Like, I think about this a lot about how a lot of like the cowboy culture that's like associated with like white Texas people is just like ranchero culture. Like a lot of people are like surprised to see a bunch of like brown motherfuckers like wearing cowboy hats, like doing lasso shit. And I'm like, no, like that's like literally our culture. And like, I don't want to call it cultural appropriation because like what happened was like the rancheros and like the cowboys, like they worked together. So of course there was a cultural exchange there. But like, it's so funny like how much like cowboy culture or ranchero culture is like a part of South Texas, but then like people associate cowboys with white people because of like Westerns and Texas Ranger and all of that.
And then the white dudes that wear that shit drive fucking brand new F-250s, like own the ranch, have never ridden a horse before in their life, and their boots are like thousands of dollars and don't get dirty, and they're like multi-millionaires, and they're like,
I'm sorry, have you ever castrated a sheep with your teeth? No. Put the hat and the boots back.
No,
it's truth.
It's a very interesting gate that you're using to gatekeep, but I really support it.
So like I've explained in the podcast before, my mom is indigenous, my dad is legitimately a cowboy, worked doing cowboy shit.
Hell yeah.
And he has a huge interest in kind of the westward expansion days, so 1850 to about 1900, and so this is like his special interest. He knows everything, and like he's taught me that like in these days, so in kind of the height of this culture, say around 1880, only 1 in 3 cowboys was white. Like they were indigenous, they were Mexican, they were black. Like it was a whole spectrum. Cowboy doesn't necessarily mean white, however it has become white especially with like the Western media boom from the 40s to the 60s, where of course everybody on screen was going to be white. Even the Indians were white in that. Thanks, Nelson.
Hey, whoa, Ironized Cody in the spaghetti western.
Oh God, I'm never gonna live this down.
You're never gonna live that down.
But yeah, like like I know that there's not going to be a lot of overlap in these listeners that are going to want to know anything about cowboy culture, but yes, only 1 in 3 of them were white at that time.
Kyle, that reminds me of you ever notice that like white boomer men can get like really woke when they talk about the specific time periods that they enjoy? Like your dad and my dad are basically the same like white guy Trump supporter, like Fox News, but like your dad will be like, did you know that only 1 in 3 of the cowboys back then were white? My dad granted, it's like lost cause bullshit, but like, you know, that did you know that blah 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 blah, and Lincoln actually wasn't for emancipation and blah blah. Like, start like I was like, the fuck, like the overlap between like left Twitter dialogue and like white boomer Trump supporters in the specific time periods, and it's like, Dad, did you just like, what did you just say that you supported Che? Like, what the fuck?
It's like accidental materialism, like accidental historical or dialectical materialism from Trump supporters.
I was gonna say like the whole thing about Lincoln is true. I was gonna say lost cause bullshit when he talks about like the Black Confederate, but like that's a myth. So, but like he will like go off on Lincoln, be like, do you know Lincoln really didn't want emancipation, and he wanted to send Black people back to Africa, and he really wasn't the great emancipator that people think he was. And it was like, Dad, like literally for that like that moment of clarity right there, I wish you had for like everything. But yeah,
the thing about it, when like conservatives say stuff like that, like I don't understand what the further analysis of it is. Like when they mention stuff like that, like are they trying to say, oh, the Democrats aren't really as good as they say they are? And I'm like, okay, true. But also, like, you just say that like Abe Lincoln wasn't truly for the emancipation of slaves, and then you don't say like, oh, and he was wrong for that. They're just like,
they start random statements. It's just like
it's like no context. It's like, so what's the implication of you mentioning that to me? You know?
Kai, have you ever had your dad try to expand on that further? Be like, oh, okay, Dad. So only 1 in 3 cowboys were white. So what does that tell you about like modern day cowboy culture?
So I will be completely fair to my dad. My family, especially on the indigenous side, have been doing educational shows for 4 generations now. And I grew up doing them as well. And my dad, before he married into my family, and since he married into my family, was part of those educational shows. And he did education about cowboys, no surprise. And when he would do these talks about cowboys, I remember very specifically that he would say things like, you don't call them chaps, you call them chaps, because it comes from chaparillo. And it's like, it comes from these words that like, they don't belong to like, to wasps basically who took this culture, and like explaining that like a lot of like that kind of culture came from Mexico, and then like gauchos down in Argentina, like there's a lot of cross pollination with these and all these practices. And so I know that he knows. I know that there's information in there. It just never like connects. And I don't know how to build that connective tissue in a 66-year-old man.
That's where the lead comes in. It blocks.
Like, Dad, I need to show you this document called the Monroe Doctrine, where they talk about how like Latin America is, you know, North America's backyard. You know, that's why the cultural exchange happened. You know, because they were trying to exploit our labor. Hello. And like also like I guess to circle again back to immigration, what I don't see a lot of people on the left talking about are the material motivations for immigration. You know, like another conservative talking point is like, oh, you should just go back to where you came from. It's so much here. But also it's like, no, I'm kind of entitled to be here and make the money here because like America is built off of like the genocide of indigenous people and the labor of Black people, and also the extracted wealth from like US's like imperial era, which it's still very much in, right? Like we don't have a lot of wealth in Latin America. We don't have a lot of wealth in Southeast Asia because like, you know, our imperialist lapdog leaders like let the United States take advantage of us. And, you know, what's like the natural thing to do when all of the wealth in your country has been stolen from you? You're going to go to where the wealth is at, and where the wealth is at is in America, the imperial core.
Yeah. That's another thing I tried to like home in with my dad. Like he'll say some shit and I'll be like, well, Dad, you know, like we overthrew, like he'll talk about stuff like he'll be like, yeah, they overthrew the governments and it was bad and blah, blah, blah. Then it'll be like, why we let them in, blah, blah, blah. I was just like, Dad, you like halfway there. they overthrew the governments and destabilized these countries. Where do you think the people are going to go? Like, they have to get somewhere where they know is safe, and here is safe. Like, they have a right, because we destroyed their country, to come here and try to make a better life. And I try to like tie it in and be like, why did our family leave Italy? Because Italy back then sucked. Like, it's just like how, like, you it's the lead. The lead blocks that connection, and apparently the connection doesn't get blocked with plastics, which is why millennials and Gen Z can understand this. But Gen X and boomers, is too much lead. There's a block right there. So
I'm gonna have a jar where every time you say the word lead, I put some coins in it, and at the end of it, I'm just gonna have all this free money to use however I want to.
Start charging him.
It's fine.
Write a
That's
receipt at the end of
fine.
every episode.
That's how I can be a good ally.
This is your reparations, Nelson.
You Venmo everyone on the episode like $13.50, like on like. We'll figure out an exchange rate.
No, it's $14.92.
Hey, if we're gonna talk about like somewhat indigenous issues here as well, I do want to like point out as well that especially when it comes to immigration from Mexico and Central America, that like these are indigenous peoples who already had migration routes further north. Like, these are our cousins, these are our brothers and sisters for indigenous people all through North America, Central America, South America. We're all like, this is our family. They have every right to come over. Like, why do you think that so many people in Mexico and Central America are brown? Like, there's a multitude of reasons. One of those reasons is that it has the highest concentration of indigenous peoples in the hemisphere. There's so many indigenous people, and like you have stories about like communities that are technically recognized indigenous tribes from the American government side who have like fences that cross the border because borders don't mean shit to us. Y'all put the borders down on top of us. Like, our families live over there. Why would we like have a border for that? Same with the US and Canada. Canada has a spongy border with a lot of indigenous tribes because our families live on either side of the border. So like the whole border situation, like there's a racism element, there's a classism element, there's this imperialist attitude, there's also like anti-indigenous sentiment when it comes to all this. What you're being when you're being anti-brown Mexicans is you're being anti-indigenous. And that's not to say that like, because the public idea for most Americans is that Mexicans are brown with black hair. Like, there's also like Afro Mexicans, there's Afro Indigenous Mexicans, there's like this is a family. And it seems weird that being like the token indigenous, like, well, not the token indigenous because Mark is also indigenous, but like being the one who talks about it so often on this show, that I would be the one who sounds like really pro-immigration and anti-borders. But like this is our natural way of things. Our natural way is to not have those borders there because this is our family.
I mean, like, what the border like represents, like in capitalism, is a way to be like, oh, the wealth is here. The border is an extension of private property, being like, oh no, these resources are only going to be available to these people. If you, and like, you know, I think like, you know, like Güero Mexican people, I guess like for those that like don't know Spanish very well, like lighter skinned, like Mexican people, fair skinned, tend to also have light hair as well and light eyes. They don't get turned away at the border. They don't. And you know, and it's also a very like, it's a hard thing for them because like, yes, they do have like some forms of white privilege in America, but like they are very much still connected to like they're like through being like Latino. However, like, you know, like it's weird because they are still functionally white in America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Settler colonialism. It's a hell of a drug.
It's a weird being indigenous myself, but being white passing and living as an immigrant in a European country. Like, I constantly see this because there's so much anti-immigrant sentiment, especially in the UK. But when they say immigrant, they mean people who don't speak English, and that's more on a xenophobia line. But there's also like anybody whose skin tone is slightly darker than alabaster, anybody who could be coming from, like, especially like in Southern Europe, anybody who's coming from North Africa, anybody who's coming from the destabilized Middle East, anybody who's coming from these areas. And so they feel free to talk about their anti-immigration sentiments with me in the room, and like don't consider me an immigrant even though I'm clearly not from this country. And that has a lot to do with my white passing, because for a British person, like Indigenous Americans, like Native Americans, doesn't cross their mind whatsoever. Like, we don't fucking exist. So for them to like see me and say, well, she doesn't look like entirely white, so I'm going to treat her like she might not be, like, it's just constant. It's constant over here. And I've had like a lot of, like, we've actually had a situation where my husband and I kind of broke off contact with one of his friends because he went on a whole tirade just before the Brexit vote was going to happen about immigration. And when I told him, like, hey, you're saying this with me in the room, he said, well, you don't count because of all the various reasons that we hear in the US. Well, you did it legally. Well, it's because I look white and I speak English, you know, those kinds of things.
Oh my God.
Yeah, when Trump got elected, my white friends who knew that my grandmother's indigenous didn't understand why I was so upset. And they were like, oh, well, you'll be fine, like, for now. Like, just disregarding all the other, like, identities that I have. But then I mentioned that my brother's half Hispanic, and his phenotype is way different than mine, where he's very dark, and he's got black hair and dark brown eyes. And it's okay for me, but if my grandparents don't think about where we're going, like if we went on vacation, like we go up to vacation in the middle of Tennessee sometimes, and if he's alone and someone doesn't understand that we're together, I worried about that when things first started ramping up. Granted, I was like a teenager, like I graduated in 2016, so you know, that was my like early like radicalization. I was like, oh no, someone's gonna come like get my brother, which like could have happened, but that's just like my first, you know, taste of how bad things could get. But my family that's indigenous are like, I'm extremely white passing. People don't even ask me and just feel free to like say things in front of me. And they'll see my grandma and then they'll kind of be like, oh, okay. And then they'll see my brother and then it's like night and day. And it's very strange to exist in this culture where it's almost like people get extremely comfortable now to just say whatever is on their mind because they think that they're in like company. So it's a very, very strange environment. I don't know.
Real quick. I want to bring it back a bit because I finally have a dog in this fight. We're talking about immigration and rules and what y'all are talking about. I finally feel so happy because normally I'm just like the white dude on the show, and I finally have a dog in this fight because.
All right, Italian X, just say your point.
The iron.
No. So you hear a lot in okay, you're gonna hear it a lot in like Irish and Italian communities. I'm more so on the Italian side because I'm not Irish, but you hear a lot in the Italian.
As far as you know.
God forbid. You hear a lot in Italian American communities. That whole line. Oh, you know, we did it legally. Our parents, our grandparents came over legally. And I have to, my dad said that one time, and I've heard other Italian Americans say that. And I have to stop them. And I have to say, when you say they came over legally, what do you mean? Because between like 1880 and 1920, 1920s when they really started heavily restricting Southern Europeans, Italians, especially in Greeks, Albanians, et cetera, coming into the United States, because, you know, we were the dirty Dagos that were gonna, you know, join the mafia and bomb Wall Street, which I mean we did, but you know, whatever. They deserved it. I tell them between like 1880, 1870, 1880, and 1920, when we came through Ellis Island, when my grandmother, my grandfather, and on my dad's side, my great grandmother, my great grandfather, when they came through Ellis Island, they were asked 3 questions. What's your name? Where are you from? Are you an anarchist? And if you were dumb enough to say, I'm an anarchist, you probably deserve to get sent back. But that was it. It was like literally my mother told me, because my mother's first generation Italian American. And so she said when her grandfather and both her grandfathers came over, they came over, it was easy, they worked, and then they sent the money back, and they got the family on a boat, and they came over through Ellis Island, bada bing bada boom, you know, welcome to America. So the process for us, for my ancestors, right, my grandparents, my great grandparents, to come through quote unquote legally was 1,000 times easier than anyone has to do anything to get to the United States today. Now it's a complete utter clusterfuck. I don't know how anyone does it. Back then, like I said, you showed up, gabagool in one hand, marinara sauce in the other. My name is Bobbity Boopy. I'm from Partana, and no, I'm not an anarchist. Okay, cool. Here, go be a baker. Go be whatever. Fuck it. And that was it. That was it. That's all they had to add. That's all they did. And so when I hear like people in the Italian American community say like, oh, well, my whatever did it legally, I was like, yeah, because it was really fucking easy. They would not have come over. They would never have made it if it was the process that you had to do now. So times change. And first off, legality shouldn't fucking matter, because borders are made up. But for our ancestors to have come over when they did, it was a hell of a lot fucking easier than it would be if they would have been able to have to do it today.
And it's so sad because like that xenophobic rhetoric like really does like keep those people from like building the working class solidarity that like both of them actually need. Because it's like, my guy, like your like blue collar job is taking like immigrants now, undocumented people now, not because the undocumented people are evil, it's because they're easier to exploit than you. Their struggle is your struggle. Their struggle to get proper documentation, even though, you know, I don't believe anyone has to be documented to have workers' rights. But anyways, like their struggle for like documentation is your struggle too. That's the reason why like your wages have stagnated. That's why like you're competing also with like people that are getting paid 20 cents per hour. Like it's so sad and like so disappointing because like, you know, I don't particularly like conservatives, but I do have like quite a soft spot for a lot of like true working class conservatives because of how like usurped they are by these like Tucker Carlson bullshit narratives.
And I want to tell people like again from like now white but white immigrant communities, it was like, what the fuck do you think they were saying about us when we came over? Like what like I want to be like, what do you think they were saying about, you know, granddad when he came over? They're like, that dirty guinea's going to take our jobs, and they come over here and they breed like rabbits. The Catholics, they're going to be bad, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, now you're repeating the same lies and bullshit that the WASPs said about the WAPs. And it's bullshit. It doesn't make, that was a really good wordplay that I want to recognize what the WASP said about the WAPs. And that was a good one. I'm proud of myself. I don't care. I know you all give me dirty looks right now, like I'm a fucking weirdo. But I am
because
weird.
I thought you said something different. Then I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word.
And it's our word. We're the wops. But yeah, it's just it goes back to uh obviously it goes back into settlers coming into whiteness and how whiteness can morph and changes, and who was white 100 years ago changed, like what is white now, et cetera, whatnot. Italians and I were white. Like there's no, we're not different, we're not othered, we're white. You know, it's been that way for Italians since at least World War II. So we've immersed ourselves into the virus that is white culture, and uh we spew the same, not me, but like I say the we as the community spew this bullshit that the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants were saying about us when we first got here. So it's really just the irony of it, is hearing that coming from a community that used to be non-white and used to be othered, now has embraced whiteness and flavorless food, and says the same bullshit that was said to us back then. So that's the few minutes that I've had a dog in a fight on an episode in a long time, and I'm gonna run with it. So yeah, I'm gonna shut up now.
Well, like that reminds me of, because like I'm also Filipino and Southeast Asian, and like my mom immigrated like through San Antonio, and like her family came here legally. 14, well, if you count the parents, 16 people legally immigrated from the Philippines to Texas. Now that was a 10-year long process to get everyone over here. There were like my mom didn't get to see her dad for 10 years while he was making enough money to get people over here. And you know, like I think like the question has been presented to her, oh well, you did it legally, don't you want other people to do it legally too? And she's like, no, it was horrible, but I had to be separated from my family for so long. I don't like, if people can bypass that process, God, I would love that. I don't think it needs to be as hard for me as it was for everyone else.
You want to talk about a process, Kai? If you want to just talk about like the little tiny bit of a process that you're having to go through, that is just fucking horrible. Anyone? Oh no, it kind of ties in because all these fucking white people are saying like, oh, I'm just, and some people, I mean, in good faith, I know, have said like, have you looked into Italian citizenship to be to go to Italy? And I'm like, I mean, yeah, it'd be kind of cool, but there's people who say that in good faith, be like, but then there's also, I hear a lot of white liberals that are like, I'm just going to move to Canada, or I'm just going to move to Europe, thinking it's so fucking easy. Whereas like we have a primary source right here that I can tell you it's not fucking easy.
So yeah, I came in on a less rigorous kind of immigration process because I got married to a British citizen. And there's no question about his provenance. His family's British for probably the last
Kai's
2,000 years.
Kai's playing the long game. This is that reverse colonization.
Yeah, I'm claiming this island for the Mohawk people. Thank you. My uncle started at the White Cliffs of Dover. I'm taking the rest of it. But yeah, so I got married in 2010. I started my immigration process in 2009 in earnest. So I've had to go through a fiance visa. I had to get my marriage visa. I had to get my leave to remain, my indefinite leave to remain 2 years after I got married. And then I just had to re-up my indefinite leave to remain this last month. So 8 years after my last one. I would say I have spent no less than $5,000 on the process. Absolutely no less, probably closer to $7,000, but there's one process in there that I can't remember how much it was. The other ones I have documentation for, and I just can't find the documentation for the other one. But it required multiple appointments that took hours. So if you imagine your average person, say for sake of ease, your average American who is not making enough money but has a job, and it's a job that has untenable hours. You don't know what hours you're going to get any week or anything like that. So you have to take time off work to go get your biometrics taken. You have to have, at that point, it was $950 for my very first visa, which only granted me 6 months in the UK and the ability to get married within those 6 months. Then I had another, after I got married, literally the day after my wedding, I went to an immigration center in Sheffield, which was probably one of the most dismal places I've ever been in my life. You do not want to spend time in these places. And I'm not saying that because, oh, immigration centers means it's full of immigrants and it's obviously horrible. No, it's because they make it horrible. The immigration center is the horrible part. It was dark. There was not enough seating. There was no seating that had backs on it unless you managed to get a bench that was against a wall, and most of them weren't. You were in there for hours with no idea of when you're going to get out of there. The time between I got my fiance visa and after I was given my leave to remain after I got married. So at that point, I would think I was granted it within 2 months of that second meeting. So for that 8 months, I was not allowed to work at all. I was not allowed to access any kind of public funds, and I was not allowed to work. So imagine again, you're an American who's not making enough money. You decide to immigrate to the UK. How are you going to support yourself for 8 months unless your partner has enough money to support you? So I had to pay extra money for that second interview because we needed to have my travel documents back in a timely manner, and travel documents routinely take like 6 months to get to you in the UK. And so for like the first year of my marriage, I didn't see my family at all because I didn't have travel documents, and I wasn't allowed to leave the UK for like the first 6 months after I got my first travel documents. Then I had to get my indefinite leave to remain, which is 2 years afterwards. That was another probably over £1,000 process. Again, I had to go get my pictures taken, my fingerprints taken. The first two processes, I think I got my retina scanned as well. They've stopped doing the retina scanning, but they still do the fingerprint and the picture taking. So yeah, so that's up to my third travel document. Now I just have my fourth one, which it said on the document that this time it was only going to cost £56 through the government to submit my document, which is great because up till now it has always been hundreds of pounds, not to mention the lawyer that we had to help me with the immigration process and the filing of all these documents and everything. So that's why I say it's closer to like $7,000, because we also had to pay a lawyer for all of this. And because I wasn't allowed to work and et cetera, lost wages and all that. So this last one, it was supposed to only be £56. However, the government has changed how they do these documents. So you are not submitting them directly to the government yourself. You have to go to a third-party commercial process. And that commercial process was at least £152 to have an appointment, just an appointment. And then if you want your documents checked by anybody at that center, it was another like £75. If you want them to upload your documents, because now it's a digital process, you don't have to send in papers, but you do have to upload them and make sure that they're legible and everything. So if you want them to upload your stuff, that's another surcharge. If you want to have text alerts to let you know, like, this is what you should expect for your appointment and everything, that was another surcharge. If you needed a translator, that was another surcharge. The translator was by far the highest surcharge. So, you know, anybody who doesn't speak English fluently enough or didn't feel comfortable speaking English fluently enough to do this, like, you're just fucked. You have to spend all this money when before you were giving this money to the government. Now you have to do it with this commercial process that just nickels and dimes you the entire way, and not just nickels and dimes, like hundreds of pounds you the entire way. And still, even though I've done all this, I've submitted my documents for this to be, what is this, my fourth travel document. I have no idea when I'm going to get it back. So I cannot effectively, like, I could technically leave the country because I have my passport on me, which is not the case for all of the other ones I've ever done, but I have no idea if I can get back into the country. So yeah, I can effectively not travel and see my family until I get this document back, and I have no idea when it's going to get to me. So anybody who thinks that the process is easy, it's fucking not. It's very expensive. You're going to spend a lot of time. You're going to lose a lot of wages if you're a working person, and the government kind of delights in keeping you up in the air and not giving you any kind of information. And that's doing it the quote unquote legal way and not having to go through like a naturalization process, which is just like a decade of your life gone.
Fuck borders. Like, you know, like they exist to make a profit off of people that are just trying to like move and be with their fucking loved ones.
Yeah.
sorry for the profanity.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
also...
yeah. No, you married a loaf of Wonder Bread, and they're still making it hard for you to get over there. It's crazy.
I speak English fluently, and I look white. I am technically like the perfect immigrant for this country, and that's how difficult it was.
That's why they're suspicious. They're like, she's too perfect. God save the queen.
Yeah, that's why I'm not a citizen, because I'd have to go through that bullshit.
Oh God.
I was like, I felt so bad because like when you told me about the retina scanning, I was like, this is 1984.
It was like I remember being in that immigration center. So that was the one that I got the day after my wedding. The first time was when I was still in the States. I had to go to a center and get it done. And then after my wedding, I had to go to this one. And it was like I was saying, it was dark. And like there was just families with like they have their kids have to be with them, the kids are crying, and there's a bunch of mothers who are like upset because their kids are crying and there's no comfort for anybody. And you just go into this little like hole in the wall where they process your documents, and it's a room full of despair because it's an immigration center is for people who have questions about their documents, for people who have been called up by the government because maybe they overstayed or maybe they didn't have the right paperwork done. Maybe they're students, and a lot of times students, like having a student visa is not as easy as you think. You can only enter the country at very specific times. You can only do so much work. You can only access so much care in the country. You can only like live in like certain things, and you have to be like sponsored by your university, etc. So there's like loads of students in there. It's just this feeling of despair and not knowing what your future is going to be, because that person who's behind that window can change fucking everything in your life at the flick of a wrist. And that's it. That's all of your dreams, all this money that you put into this process, gone. And once the government has kind of strikes against you in its system, it gets worse. Everything from then on, if you try to appeal it, it's going to be on there, and it makes it so much more likely that it's never going to go your way again.
Yeah.
So
it's not as easy as you think, liberals.
Yeah. So
you get to live out,
you're
gonna get to live out your Handmaid's Tale fantasy.
Sorry, you have to stay here and continue to vote. We need you in the line right now.
Yes. Vote harder, damn it.
Vote harder.
Vote blue no matter who. It doesn't matter if that blue is pro-life. You vote blue no matter who.
It's
I shouldn't even say pro-life, anti-abortion.
Anti-abortion. I mean, like one of like the chants that we say a lot at our abortion rallies is like pro-life is a lie. You don't care if people die, because it's super true. Like, and like neither do the Democrats. I mean, they sat on their ass for 40 years
and didn't do shit.
Like didn't do anything. You know, now we have Beto running again in Texas.
Beta O dork.
It's just, oh my gosh, because like it like you know, I coalition build you know, like abortion issues. Like I feel like Democrats in southern states are a little bit more based than like the Democrats in the northern states, because like of how like they understand that we're in a lot of shit right now. So like I have had to work with like a lot of Democrats, and that's fine, and they're swell and all of that, but like it's just sometimes it's frustrating when people are like, we need to vote, we need to wait till November. It's like, no, we need to take political action right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's people who are suffering from these things right now who can't wait.
Yeah.
So like in San Antonio, and like this also happened in Austin, it sadly failed in El Paso, and I think it's happening in Dallas. We're trying to pass this thing called the Grace Act, which would functionally decriminalize abortion in our city, because what it's going to do is going to block city funding to going towards investigation of abortion reports, and it's also going to require that our police department put it at its lowest priority. So everyone's like, oh no, we have to wait for city council to stop their recess. I'm like, no, we have to do it right now. We have to push them for like a special thing and all of that.
Yeah, the house is on fire, so I guess we should wait until the firefighters get here to do anything.
Yeah. And it sucks because like, you know, like I've talked to a lot of undocumented people that want to show up to these like rallies and protests, but they can't, in fear of getting like deported, being put in an ICE detention center, for whatever reason, and like it's just it's horrible what's happening there. Like I've like been a socialist, I've been a communist for a very, very long time. And I didn't know I could get any more radicalized than I could. But when Joe Biden was continuing to give ICE detention centers more money, like after like using my people as like a campaigning tactic, I've lost. Completely lost.
Listen here, Jack. We gotta remain, and they're gonna what? And then he just falls off the bike.
Yes, and now like he's putting more funding towards the wall. Like I think I saw this tweet from the Liberal. They're like, "Good job, Mr. President. You did what Trump was trying to do, and you got the Mexicans to pay for like infrastructure in the wall," which like is kind of a misrepresentation of like what exactly like the Mexican like president agreed to. It was more just like infrastructure, but like still like President Biden is putting money towards our border wall, which is only result in more violence, because like human trafficking, like no one wants to talk about this, like like conservatives and liberals alike, but human trafficking exists because there's a border. Like I know it seems like such a like stupid thing to do. It's like, oh, you don't want that to happen? Literally like stop enforcing the border so heavily. There's a reason why there's not like strong human trafficking across the Canada border, right? Because it's not as heavily regulated. Like there still is like to become a citizen is like one thing, but when it comes to also like take into account the fact that like Canada did not suffer the perils of imperialism, instead is a settler colonial colony as well.
Canada. Our racist neighbor to the north.
Our other favorite punching bag on this show.
But I guess Tori, my next to kind of move away a little bit from depressing topics was to say like who on the ground, you touched on this a little bit, but like who on the ground is doing like the good work. I know like liberals want to say they're doing good work, but like who is there actually like really trying to do something that's not vote blue no matter who.
Well, not to plug my own party, but I am in the party of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and we did like mobilize nationally to organize protests, and a lot of us did join coalitions that are very specific. PSL Houston, PSL Austin, PSL Dallas have done really great things. PSL San Antonio, we've done a lot of stuff, but also specific to like South Texas and San Antonio, Buckle Bunnies and Lilith Fund. Those are abortion funds that are taking into account that like people, in order for them to still get abortions, like need to go over and they need like travel costs and all of this stuff. And I think some of them even like provide abortion doulas still, which is a really cool thing. Specific to San Antonio is the Mujeres Marcharán Coalition. If anyone from San Antonio is listening to this, hi, please come say hi to me. You should follow Mujeres Marcharán on Facebook and Instagram and hopefully Twitter, because we are a coalition of like many different like people from many different backgrounds. Like we have socialists, we have just like everyday people, we have like newbies that are like just trying to like do abortion protests, and our main goal in San Antonio has been like pushing for decriminalization and informing people about our trigger ban, because Texas has a very like layered has very layered laws in regards to abortion right now.
Yeah.
So I mean, like not to get too into it, but we are currently, our Texas Supreme Court ruled that we are currently under our 1925 law because it was never repealed post Roe. right? So we like Texas House Bill 1280, which is like the total like abortion ban, like the trigger law, isn't supposed to go into effect until like 30 days after the like SCOTUS judgment was released. However, our fucking Christo-fascist politicians really want people to stop having abortions and fearmonger people. So our Texas Supreme Court was like, hey, so for now, you're just going to go, you know, to prison for 10 years if you attempt or give an abortion. If you attempt to give or if you attempt to like seek out an abortion. But that's going to change once Texas House Bill 1280 comes into effect. Then it becomes a second-degree felony if you attempt to give an abortion or if you attempt to like seek out an abortion. And like this is like the fucking kicker that's like about the bill is that it turns into a first-degree offense if the unborn child doesn't survive.
What?
Okay.
What?
Yeah.
Isn't that the
like that's the thing about it. It's like the thing about like Texas House Bill 1280 is
In the
like,
eyes of a ranger.
is that it pretends to give a lot of concessions when it's just like a total abortion ban, right? Like there's no exceptions for rape, there's no exceptions for incest. We do have one exception though, but it is like functionally moot. It says like the hospital's like, hey, like if the like female person that's pregnant is at risk of death or like severe bodily injury as a result of the pregnancy, like they can get an abortion. And then like another like qualifier for that is that like it has to be done by a licensed physician, and that said licensed physician has to do everything in their power to make sure that the child survives. Which like
Jeez.
Like you can just tell that these people have no idea how any of this works.
Oh,
oh
yeah.
my goodness. Yeah, like the way that they define unborn child is both the fetal and embryonic stages of pregnancy.
And the best, like they'll have doctors be like, you cannot you cannot transplant an ectopic pregnancy. Like it has to be terminated. And they're like, what? That's not what I do. But
And like the thing is like you like those that like do experience ectopic pregnancies like still can get an abortion in Texas. However, like what's probably going to happen is, and like doctors have already been reporting this, is that like your healthcare staff is going to wait until the last possible minute to give you that abortion because the way the law is written. Like a lot of nurses and anesthesiologists are scared to like give people life-saving abortions because they're like, well, they might rule later on that like death wasn't so certain and that this patient wasn't on death's door and that like I was like aiding and abetting an illegal abortion. So like, you know, even though it's like, hey, like if you need an abortion to save your life, you can get it, because like a lot of medical staff like don't understand the ins and outs of the law because it is written in an intentionally inaccessible manner. Like they don't want to perform the abortion until like that person is like literally on death's doorstep and like probably do have like permanent like bodily injury with them for the rest of their life because they waited until the last minute. So that's why like passing, you know, the Grace Act in all of these cities is really important for us, because we're like, hey, like people should be able to like get an abortion and not be scared that the police are going to be like knocking at the hospital's door being like, we're gonna need to investigate this, because we wouldn't give city funding to the police to do that. It's bad in Texas right now. So please, also another good organization to support and follow is South Texans for Reproductive Justice. They've been doing amazing things. Have y'all heard about Lizelle Herrera, her story? Okay, so this happened pre-Roe, when Texas was still on like the like heartbeat bill. And what happened was, allegedly, Lizelle Herrera gave herself a self-induced like abortion through a pill, and she disclosed this to the medical staff. And allegedly, one of the medical staff reported her to the police because Texas does have like mandatory reporting laws. So like she was probably scared. She's like, if I don't report this, then they're gonna go ahead and throw me in jail too. And what happened was is they arrested her, and through a very like disciplined and organized campaign with South Texans for Reproductive Justice, they were able to get her out, and she's like no longer imprisoned. So like definitely check out, follow, and you know, donate if you can to South Texans for Reproductive Justice. They do awesome things like Plan B packing parties, and they like distribute like a lot of essential reproductive health care.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Well, that's great.
Mhm.
I'm glad it's so. That's like when we had Mia on the last episode. She was talking like we're having to do that here in Alabama. A lot of like Plan B and condoms and a lot of things like just like hey, get it out as much as possible because it's completely banned here and it's not coming back anytime soon. I guess like the kind of to tie it in more with immigration. I don't know if we might have touched on this, but it seems like all of this is also compounded with the fact that now, and you mentioned them wanting to come to protests and they can't. If undocumented people need access to an abortion, it's just another horrible step to have for them to have to take because now
they're straight up coerced into forced birth. Like they are being forced to give birth by the state because like how they can move is severely limited, right? So even if they're close to Mexico, right, where they could get an abortion in Mexico, undocumented people can't risk crossing the border, right? So they're just going to like be forced to give birth, and they like can't, most times they can't afford or risk to cross state borders into something else. So like, you know, like it, like, you know, it's possible, but like it just does, it's not going to happen for undocumented women, which like again is, and like a lot of undocumented people are like usually scared to go ahead and reach out to these reproductive justice organizations, you know, because they're afraid they're going to get exposed. And like I really want to stress that like a lot of reproductive justice organizations, we care about immigration too. We're not going to disclose any of your information or anything like that. We're going to do everything we can to help you out. But again, like a lot of people are really scared, so they're not going to seek that option out, and they are forced to give birth by the state.
Yeah, I can't imagine like having to cross the border, me undocumented, and then like that happened and having the only option to be like go back and then have to cross again. It's just like you're testing fate twice. Like it's, and then you made a good point. It's not just the international border; it's going across state borders. Because what happens if you get something happens in another state? There's like it's not just like from Mexico to Texas. It's like also Texas to New Mexico or Texas to well, everyone else around Texas is also outlawed abortion. So it really is Texas to New Mexico, which brings up another point that like Texas is massive and people don't realize how big Texas is. And the only U.S. state that has legal abortion around Texas is New Mexico. So if you live on the eastern part of Texas, it's going to take you forever, almost over 24 hours to drive to get to New Mexico. People don't realize like how big fucking Texas is.
Oh yeah, like a 4-hour drive is like no big deal for Texans usually, but like also like if you're just traveling for vacation, but if you're traveling for abortion access, healthcare access, 4 hours is like way too long. You know, and like on top of that, New Mexico doesn't have a lot of abortion clinics. I like some comrades from like New Mexico PSL, they talked about how you know, it was a success to get like abortion as a right in the New Mexico Constitution, which like congratulations to them on that. But like the work isn't done there because there's not a lot of abortion clinics, and those abortion clinics are going to like have more pressure on them if like New Mexico wants to like treat itself as a safe haven, like in the Southwest. You know, like even when like Texas did have legal abortion, we did not have a lot of abortion clinics, you know, even like, because we are going to get it back. Like abortion is going to be a right for us again. It's gonna not just happen, like we have to make it happen, but we are going to will it to happen. But like the fight really doesn't stop there. Like we have to continue to be like, we need more abortion clinics, and we also need to overturn the Hyde Amendment, which you guys have probably talked about on this podcast before. Yeah.
So for people who don't know, it's bans federal funds from being used for abortion, like ban for like Medicaid and stuff like that. You can't Social Security, any sort of federal funding to be used for abortion care. So yeah, Democrats like to re-up that every year too.
And they're the first woman to die as a direct result from the Hyde Amendment was a teacher in South Texas. She wanted to, you know, get an abortion, and she couldn't because, you know, her insurance was paid through federal dollars, and she died as a result of it. And it sucks because like it usually takes like I think in Poland, they used to have a total ban on abortion, and it took someone dying for them to reverse it. Right? In America, one person dies. Oh, that's just the sacrifice of democracy here. Just
as Poland and like Hungary backslide into fascism.
I'm pretty sure that was Ireland actually, but yeah, there's a very similar.
Oh
okay,
yeah,
Ireland.
no, it was. Yeah. Because no, I know. I was thinking.
I don't know what Europe is.
I was thinking,
please, you don't have to. You don't want to know.
I was like, yeah, that actually, Kai, you're right. I think that was definitely that was the Republic. It was in the Republic. Yeah.
That was the Savita Halappanavar case in the Republic of Ireland. Like 2014, 2015, somewhere around there. Maybe 2013. But yeah, that's what caused it. She had an infection that was going to require her to have an abortion to treat the infection, an infected uterus, I think. And for one, she was in a Catholic hospital, and for two, because most hospitals in Ireland are Catholic, but for two, she couldn't access the transportation to get someplace like England where she could have gotten a legal abortion, because I think at that point they still had provisions for like in the case of like imminent death, but they did what basically you were talking about, was that they waited so long to give her any care that she ended up dying from it, and that caused an outrage, this outcry of public sentiment that finally, like, that was the case that kind of propelled getting any kind of rights in Ireland, and it took years.
Then they had to have a referendum because they had the referendum, and I think it just barely passed, right? That they could legalize abortion.
Yeah.
Because I was like, yeah, Poland's basically backslid into fascism. I think they have an all-out ban. I think they have I'm
pretty sure they do, and the women and people who can give birth have been protesting there for years. I feel like, but again, that's another one of those places where like the feminism is quite closely tied to turfery, so the language that comes out of there is like, yeah, you really want to be like, yes, okay, let's go Poland, and then holy fuck, what the fuck are you saying? Like,
Poland, why?
I mean, not to get too off topic, but I just like want to go on a quick rant about like how much I like hate TERFs and how like their rhetoric is like what fucking got us in our situation.
Let's go
down with the TERFs.
Because
you hear that, J.K. Rowling? Fuck Harry Potter.
Like, here's the thing about it is like the thing that they like agree with, they agree with Christo-fascists on the definition of woman, adult human female that's like able to reproduce for some reason, and it's like, you know, like limiting womanhood to that, like what it does is it like reinforces like the capitalist notion, because under capitalism, Engels talks about this, where like labor was divided from like in like reproductive and like regular labor, and like women were supposed to be doing reproductive labor, like being pregnant, raising children, doing domestic work, etc. Right? So like connecting womanhood to one's ability to reproduce, to one's like genitalia, is literally our fucking chains. And then TERFs want to be here and be like, oh my goodness, they're trying to erase women. This is so bad. This is the real problem. I'm like, no, like tying womanhood to like genitalia and reproductive function is like what keeps us oppressed. And that's why like abortion got taken away from us, because like these Christofascists are trying to like uphold that we talk about like base superstructure theories when it comes to like Marxism, right? Where the base capitalism maintains and is maintained by the superstructure, which is like culture, media, etc., right? And like rhetoric. So like what TERFs are basically doing is they are like upholding capitalism and these like super antiquated gender roles by like tying womanhood to adult human females. It's such bullshit.
Hashtag tried wife.
No, that's like they literally like sometimes I can't tell the difference between TERFs and like trad wifery sometimes, because like they use fucking language.
Yeah, there's a very I don't even know if there's a line between like TERFs and like alt-right, like fascism, like the fascists that like uphold this traditional I guess like a Christian look, like outlook of the family and like what the roles are and everything. It's just you're right, it's the same rhetoric. It's such bullshit. Yeah, I don't have a joke for it. It's bullshit.
He hates J.K. Rowling and Bette Midler. Betty Midler or Bette Midler? Bette Midler. Okay, fun fact. I didn't know she was like a musician. I thought she was just a super popular TERF.
Oh, was that? Oh, yeah, I know you're talking about. Yeah.
She's an actress and she did like comedy songs in the 70s and 80s. I'm a little upset because one of my favorite 80s movies has her in it, and like I liked her character, and I'm like, fuck, I can't like this anymore.
You either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. That's what it is. You
cannot trust any like 70s feminists. Like you can't. Like sometimes they come through and it's like, oh, that's great, but you have to assume that all of them are just in the shit.
Well, it's like funny because it's just like, okay, like y'all obviously haven't like read your own theory. Like, even though I don't consider myself to be a radical feminist, like actual radical feminist theory is trans inclusive, like very explicitly so. And like, I'm obviously a proletarian feminist, but like, I do take some influence like from like rad femme. So it's just like not only can they not be trusted because they're old, but also because like they're stupid. They can't interpret their own text.
Yeah. You know why that is though, right? Because there was a certain chemical.
Oh my God, Nelson. That'll be another
$1 in the jar. But yeah, and it's like people like white supremacists co-opting like cool movements that are popular with younger generations, like Riot Girl stuff and stuff with like Harry Potter and all these like little like girl power movements, and they take stuff like out of context and twist it.
My manic pixie fascist.
She's got the TERF bangs and
yes, TERF bangs.
TERF bangs.
It's just like I was watching something. It was someone. It was this fucking neo-Nazi dude in the U.S. that was like there was a video on Twitter. He was like regurgitating some like Goebbels speech about the Jews, etc. And then it was just like you see the next picture, and this dude's like in fucking cat ears and a maid outfit. It's just like, what? What is happening?
That is a citizen of Reddit if I've ever seen.
A citizen. How hard is it to immigrate to Reddit?
It's free,
Where
but you have to hate everyone who's not straight white men and the women that they love.
wait, doesn't China have Reddit bans?
But
I think
I think
so.
thank you, President Xi.
Based.
President Xi. My president, President
On
Xi.
my way over.
Facebook's banned, Reddit's banned. Thank you. We gotta limit the time kids can play video games. Thank you, President Xi. Please save
What do you
us.
mean? Preventing their brains from being malformed and having a
If this
chemical
is-
imbalance is bad?
If this is what Big Brother does, I'll take it. I love having an older brother now.
Yeah, I'm glad. If that's 1984, please bring on the 1984.
I put my cart back. I can have a good social credit score. It'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. Tori, I know you took notes. Was there anything that you had down that you want to talk before we wrap it up? Was there anything that we skipped or anything you want to go over?
Not anything super significant. Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. I just, I guess like on a note that I want to wrap up on is, the like immigration and abortion, there are things that, you'll see in the news cycle that kind of get like recycled and thrown away. And we're really like organizers, we're really feeling that media cycle. Cause I remember like when these big news stories would come up, we'd get so much support and people like showing up to our events and like getting excited to get educated. But now that it's been like 3 weeks or like 2 weeks, like people aren't that excited anymore. And we really do need that people power in order to get stuff done. Don't just rely on like the media to tell you what's important. These things exist whether or not MSNBC is covering them.
I want to rant one day. We got to do an episode of like about the media because like I want to rant about the former Republican to MSNBC host pipeline that no one is talking about. And I want to list like all the horrible things like Michael Steele, Joe Scarborough, what's that other woman that was a fucking Republican hitman for like fucking hatchet jobs and all that shit. All the just the horrible things that these people did, said, or contributed to fucking to just expose them. Because you know what Mia told me? And I made a TikTok about it, but I probably get more people listening to it. Fucking Joe Scarborough, right? This is the touch on abortion. Joe Scarborough, everyone's favorite morning host, the Republican that saw the light, right? Before he was a Republican congressman from like 1994 to 2001, right? He defended for free, pro bono, right? The man who fucking murdered Dr. Gunn, the abortion provider who was murdered in Pensacola. He literally fucking defended and got off that man. I believe he got off. I don't know if that's, he defended him for free. You have to look up if he got off or not, but he defended him for free.
You did this on your ham radio show.
I did on my ham radio show.
The Nelson Power Hour.
Oh my God.
Super cute.
That's the next. Everyone's like, how do you record podcasts over the internet? Are you going to use Zoom? You're going to use NK? You're going to use what? No, we're going to start doing it over ham radio. It's going to be live. You tune in this frequency within this. We're going to get repeaters to start nationwide shortwave radio podcasting.
You got to develop a transatlantic accent.
Boop, 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 boop. This just in. Abortion.
The guy did not get off.
Oh, okay.
He was put into a Florida prison. He's imprisoned at Blackwater River Correctional Facility. That sounds really fucking terrifying.
Ooh.
But yeah, just as a point of correction. There you go.
So he defended him for free. And he obviously wasn't able to get him off.
He didn't even do a good job at it.
Yeah,
like,
also, like
how hard
everyone,
is it to get a conviction.
This
for
guy
an
did
anti-abortion
I know, right?
activist in
Florida.
North Florida. Of all places.
And the thing is like Joe Scarborough took that case for free, knowing good and well that this happened in broad daylight in front of people. Like people saw this like happen. There's no denying. And that dude was like, yeah, I did it. And Joe Scarborough was like, I'm going to defend you. And then 20, 30 years from now, I want to be on MSNBC and pretend to be cool. So there you go. I don't trust Republicans. If you're a Republican between 1980 and now, I don't trust you. I'm sorry. Elizabeth Warren, I'm looking at you. Everyone else that's on MS at Michael Steele, all of you. None of you deserve any redemption.
Wait, I don't know how I missed this. Elizabeth Warren used to be a Republican?
Yeah, she left the party in 1996.
See, that was like the year right before I was born.
Yeah,
so that's why I missed out on
She gave
it.
speeches at the Federalist Society.
I just turned into dust and flew away.
Same. Yeah, she said I left the party because their economics didn't align with mine. So you literally stayed there all through like Reaganomics, like.
Oh my goodness, that's why we don't have fucking. That's why Roe never got codified, whatever. Like,
I cannot take back all the times that I defended her when Trump was calling her anti-Indigenous slurs. But boy, do I feel fucking sour about it.
Oh, then nothing beats Michael Steele to get on there. Michael Steele's the new person on MSNBC or whatever. But let's not forget that he was chair of the RNC from 2009 to 2011 or 2008, 2010, 2009, 2011, whatever it was. And he the fire Pelosi bus, which I mean, cool, but he was doing it because the Tea Party. Let's not forget that Michael Steele said, if I wasn't chair of the RNC, I'd be with the Tea Party. And like the whole, birth of movement that he was against, but never really did anything to dispel that from the party. And like the whole all this other anti-abortion, anti-gay marriage, all this shit. Like he was chair of the RNC when they took back the House and ruined everything. So I'm glad MSNBC that you're doing this. Thank you so much,
MSNBC
liberal media.
It's like it's like doing Operation Paperclip. Like this is what it sounds like media Operation Paperclip.
So real quick before we log out, there was that operation, was it Mockingbird, where like the CIA was going to have agents in with the news broadcasts, and Tucker Carlson applied to be a CIA agent, but quote unquote didn't get accepted. And let's also not forget that Anderson Cooper, the Silver Fox intern at the CIA. So there you go. There's your little taste of some conspiracies that actually have a grain of salt to them. So
I'm gonna get all my news from TikTok then.
I know, thank God. Everyone knows that Yakub is real.
/J.
My news from TikTok is Yakub is real, white people the devil. So yeah, that's where we go. Tori, thank you for coming on. Real quick, at Dixieland, the proletariat will lead the South to rise again, this time for the right reasons. Those being worker-owned means of production, decolonization, self-determination for all oppressed peoples. Make sure to click on our link tree in the show notes to find all of our social media. We are coming to you from the birthplace of the civil rights movement, Montgomery, Alabama, as well as sweet Georgia and jolly old England. We also like to recognize we're recording on land that is occupied and rightfully belongs to the Muskogee Nation and the Creek Nation. Tori, real quick, before we Mark signs us off, where can folks find you on social media?
So you can find me on Twitter at NoodlesTori. You can find me on TikTok, where I will eventually come back, I swear, at Tori Noodles. And I would also encourage you to please follow my coalition, Mujeres Martirán, on Facebook. We usually plan the International Women's Day March here in San Antonio, but we have been doing a lot of abortion organizing now. So, if anything, you should probably follow Mujeres Martirán on Facebook and Instagram before you follow me on Twitter and TikTok.
Hell yeah. And then send me those links and I'll drop them in the show notes for people to, or if you have a link tree or there's anything, I can put it in the show notes. Mark.
Yeehaw.
Fuck the law.
was that the sign off? Yeehaw.
Is that not good enough for you?
No, it was perfect. That was perfect. Can you get another good yeehaw to end it, if you don't mind?
Well, now it's cheapened.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I fucked it up.
You should be.
It's another $14.92.